Welcome to Proper Wealth with me, Paul Mahoney, the show where we discuss all things wealth creation, including property. Today I have with me Nathaniel Taylor from NPP Investments. Welcome, Nathaniel.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks for inviting me down.
So, obviously we're talking about Manchester as a buy-to-let hotspot. Being from Manchester yourself, perhaps we can start off with a general chat about Manchester as a place to live.
Yeah, well, I say Manchester, I might be biased because I say I lived there for the past 5 years or so myself. But it's a fantastic place to live. I mean, the amenities that you've got there, the infrastructure that's going into the city is absolutely fantastic, second to none. I mean, I think that the Northern Powerhouse as such, sort of living there, you're sort of really seeing that coming along very, very well now. I mean, I sort of live in an area called Castlefield, which is right in the centre of the heart there. And I say sort of seeing the development over the sort of past 5 or 6 years has been outstanding. New businesses come into the area, which has been absolutely fantastic in terms of like new bars, new cafes, new restaurants, etc., new shops, which makes it a very, very nice place to live. I mean, going back to the infrastructure in terms of what's actually been ploughed into the city, you sort of see an absolute massive change over the sort of past 5 years. So it's been very, very good.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, I think it's always good to hear from someone who's actually there because you read a lot about it, you see a lot happening, but you know, I think a lot of people always kind of question things like the Northern Powerhouse sort of terminology that gets bandied around a lot, but is it actually happening? It certainly seems like it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think when you have picking an area to invest in, I think you've always got to look at the infrastructure that's going into the place, the environment that you are invested into. And one thing is the big hit at the moment is the Northern Powerhouse and what's going on there. And I think the guys over there within the committee that's doing everything, they've got it absolutely spot on. I mean, the expansion of the airport, which is over £1 billion, which is going to make, well, it is currently one of the UK's busiest airports there, but it's going to make commuting into Manchester and all over the world much, much easier. You've got the HS2 line, which is due for completion at 2030. So again, that's just making Manchester more accessible for the whole country. Which again, when you're looking at somewhere to invest, you've got to look at these certain things. I do think. So, and I say new businesses coming to the area. I mean, I think in the next sort of couple of years or so, it's been reported that about 1.5 million square foot of new office space is going to be developed in the city. So it sounds obviously making all the right sounds to making a very, very good investment for anybody, for people in the UK, but again, people all over the world.
Yeah, well, yeah, a lot of the UK's major corporates are moving up there, aren't they? You know, previously probably London-based companies taking more and more office space up there and therefore creating more jobs, which I suppose makes sense. As you say, the accessibility, also the cost. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think it's been a bit more of an alternative recently, but I mean, the candidates that we've got in Manchester, the people that work there, I mean, we've got 2 major universities, and I say the postgraduates are staying on there, so the calibre of staff that the companies are getting are very, very good. I mean, I read a report the other day, and it didn't really surprise me, but I think over 80% of the FTSE 100 actually have a presence in Manchester, which is very, very good and says a lot for the city. I mean, just outside of the city, you have an area called Salford Quays, which is a beautiful area to live. I mean, it's accessible by the Metrolink. It's only 5 minutes or so, and it's a couple of minutes drive. But there's plenty of IT companies that are going there. A lot of different facilities that are being placed there. But the BBC are pictured there as well, along with the ITV. So again, it's sort of seeing all these big corporate companies arriving in Manchester, which obviously helps.
It's like a second city, isn't it?
Yeah,
just next to the city.
Exactly. But obviously, it helps growth, it helps jobs, and obviously we say developers as such in Manchester certainly have to keep up with that demand, and I say the demand for properties in Manchester is very, very high, along with the rental sector as well. The rental sector is very, very strong at the moment, very, very strong. So I say again, making all the right sounds for a fantastic.
I suppose with companies like BBC and ITV being based there, Manchester's becoming more sort of dominant in the media as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's on the TV more, which I think sort of works its way into people's minds quite a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've actually got our own Manchester Games as such, which is a very, very fun weekend in Manchester. So, which is actually aired on the BBC, and I say goes all over the world. So, and again, football, the football clubs. We've got two fantastic football clubs, albeit I'm a Red, so it does pay me to say when Manchester City obviously won the title recently. But again, it's just opened us up to the world market. It's a world market that we're open up to. The exposure for Manchester is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's a fantastic place.
How would you say are some of the main ways the city's changed since, for example, 2007, 2008? Obviously, the last financial crisis, the city did quite well from a property price growth perspective then. How would you say it's different now?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, going back to the infrastructure that's improving. I mean, we've got more control of the money that's where it's been spent in the city, which again, I think it's very, very important when you look to improve a city that you've got people who know the city as such. You don't want to leave out on lose the tradition that Manchester certainly got. So in terms of the development that's going up, it's certainly within keeping. Again, the Metrolink system, I mean, that's been a godsend in Manchester at the moment, so it just keeps on expanding, and it helps people that live out on the suburbs come into the city centre.
How long has the Metro been in place?
Well, the Metro's been in place, I say, for about over 20 years. But now it's just we've got some grants on the money, which has helped it certainly improve. A lot more lines that are going there. The last Metrolink, it's going into the middle of the night at weekends as well, so obviously it helps people, revellers in the city as well, who go into the cafes and bars, etc. But again, for people for employment that live outside the city, it helps them get into the city to work for these companies that are
it certainly does seem like a much more robust city. You know, I believe it's the UK's second largest city now. And there seems to be the most sort of, so compared to any other city aside from perhaps London, from an infrastructure spending perspective, population growth, economic growth, it does definitely seem to be the centre of all of that at the moment.
Yeah, no, I certainly would agree with that. I mean, there was a report again just recently out by Deloitte which shows actually Manchester is the fastest growing city in Europe. I mean, HSB, one of the largest banks in the world, has highlighted Manchester as being the buy-to-let hotspot in the UK. So, I mean, when you're looking at, looking at back to a place where you're looking to invest, you do have to look at all these key stats, these key figures, and what the experts do say. I mean, last year, in terms of growth in the property prices, you're looking at over 7%, which again is unheard of in terms of in London. You're not getting that return anymore. Again, it's the fastest growing house prices all over in the UK. So it's obviously it's again going in the right direction. I mean, in the next 4 or so years, I mean, you're looking at in the region of 18%, depending on which report you do read. But I say it's all going forward in terms of the prices.
I saw a stat the other day on net migration within the UK, and that it's actually now quite strongly away from London and the southeast toward the north, which makes sense, you know, when you think about it. So far as young professionals coming out of university, trying to buy their first home. And especially in London, you know, they can't buy anything.
No, exactly.
When you've got property prices 10 times average incomes, well, it's very, very difficult to get onto the property ladder. And those same people can go up to somewhere like Manchester and be quite similar money and you know, buy a penthouse apartment in the centre of the city for, you know, less than they could buy a one-bedroom apartment on the fringe of London. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I mean, we've seen that quite a lot. I mean, obviously with investors and homeowners alike, you see that it's more affordable for them. I say the average sort of price for a one-bedroom apartment in Manchester, you're looking in the region between 180,000 and 220,000, depending on the location of it and where it stands situated in the development. But again, it's certainly more affordable for them to live into Manchester, and I say it's an attractive place because in terms of the developments and what the developments are offering in Manchester, that it's a whole sort of community feel, and it's more you've got more amenities on site as well. So it's making it an attractive place for people to live with. They have the gyms on site, they have shops on site, cinema rooms on site, even some of the development sites which have roof garden terraces which communities can enjoy. So again, it is more affordable, but it's still attractive.
There's also been some progression in the type of property you're saying, so sort of catering more to what people want.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think again, going back to the Northern Powerhouse, the committee there, the planners in the city centre, obviously the developers in there, it's a case of they are thinking about what they're doing before they're doing it, and thinking, what does the market want, what does the market need, what sort of people are going to be living there, and I say we need to cater for the professionals that are working at these big corporate companies that are coming into the city. So again, it's vital that we're going to be catering. Well, the developers are going to be catering for them.
Okay, and there's been a few questions around how sort of private landlords, especially in places like Manchester, might be able to compete against a lot of the bigger PRS guys coming into the market. Yeah. What's your take on that?
Well, as I say, I think in terms of the PRS schemes, I mean, it's, again, going back to the planning, the council and what they have planned for the future, and it's vital that you do have a balance. And I say the PRS schemes, I mean, there we sell to your hedge funds and your big corporate companies. So there's a balance between what can be residential and what can be into a PRS scheme. So the balance is still very, very on the residential side.
The council's well controlling that, you feel?
Yeah, exactly. So going back to the point, it's very important they know what they're doing and they've got the good vision in ahead of them in terms of what they want Manchester to be and what they want Manchester to be there, and to make it attractive for homeowners and investors and your private investors also. I mean, there is certainly attractive yields to be had in Manchester. I mean, your current yield, you're looking at anywhere between 6 and 7% on the rental market. So I say put that alongside the capital growth in terms of the prices, house prices are going to increase. It's still very, very accessible to your private landlord investor.
Okay, great. Well, that's all we've got time for now, but please join us after the break because we'll be back. Welcome back to Proper Wealth with me, Paul Mahoney. Joining me again is Nathaniel Taylor from NPP Investments. So, Nathaniel, before the break we spoke a lot about Manchester as a place to live, some of the changes in the market, and briefly on the property market specifically. If we can delve a bit more into property now. Obviously, we already spoke about some of the drivers, but I think it'd be interesting to talk about what's happened sort of from a price growth perspective over recent years. So if we can touch on that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in terms of the city centre has provided the most growth in terms of the house prices going up. So I think ordinarily for like a one-bedroom apartment inside the actual city centre, you were looking somewhere in the region about 165,000. In recent times now, you're looking at over 200,000. So there's certainly plenty of growth that has come from inside the city centre.
Over the past sort of 3 or 4 years, is that?
Yeah, so it's the past 3 or 4 years, that's the sort of growth that we have experienced. So, I mean, there's still plenty of room for it to grow over the next few years with certainly what's happening in Manchester, what we discussed earlier. But I think there is still pockets inside Manchester that are quite not just there yet. So you've got places of regeneration, for example, that's happening within the city centre. So places that maybe just like the old warehouses, a bit of scrubland, etc. So that can be very, very good when it comes to the end of it. So, and I say creating more places within the city centre, that's going to be one of the prime places to live.
It's almost a ripple effect from the centre to the fringes.
Yeah, exactly. I certainly would say that. And I say, as you sort of see over the next few years, Manchester's going to keep on expanding out. I mean, there's been, well, it's currently, you can see it taking place at the moment. I mean, from Manchester City Centre going over to Salford Quays, where we mentioned before, where the BBC are set. It's the developments are taking place. There's more infrastructure going in there, so it just keeps on growing and connecting to all these outside places. So again, I say the city centre is seeing the most, and it will continue to see the most. But there's certainly pockets just outside of the city centre that you will certainly see growth in.
I suppose if you look at the past 3 or 4 years, you mentioned 150, 160 to now over 200. It's probably a little bit difficult to see that continuing over the next 2 or 3 years. So perhaps those fringe areas are more likely to do better.
Yeah, I mean, they will do very, very well. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from the city centre, because I mean, I think in terms of where people want to live, they do like to live in the city centre. They've got everything there, certainly there on the doorstep. And again, going back to the place where I live in Castlefield, it's an area in the city where you sort of walk out and it's a bit more tranquil, and it's very, very nice. And some people, it's all about different people's perceptions of where they want to live, etc. But yeah, no, certainly there is some areas within the city, just outside of the city, that again they will see the most increases, because I say they're nothing at the moment. If you know what I mean, there is certainly places within around it, but
I suppose you're kind of buying ahead of the curve there, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, quite a lot of people have said to me over the past few years, and invested in Manchester and sort of seeing the growth. They feel like it's like getting into an area of like London, for example. Obviously, you saw a lot of growth over the past few years, and it's sort of getting into London at the very, very early stages. So I say you get into an area.
A good example of that is Hackney.
Yeah.
Which is a really nice place now.
Yeah.
But going back not so long ago, perhaps wasn't that nice.
Yeah.
But it's experienced 850% growth over the past 30 years, so which is the fastest growing town in the UK. So that's quite interesting, I think. 5 miles from the city centre in London, and has performed the best.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I mean, there's certainly going to be areas. I wouldn't say 850% growth. I certainly would not say that. But again, I think you've certainly got areas, for example, Salford Quays. I mean, in the east side of Manchester, I mean, you've got, for example, where Manchester City's football ground is, at the Etihad Stadium. I mean, that area 5, 6, 7 years ago, before the Commonwealth Games came and Manchester City took over the stadium, it wasn't the area as such. Maybe obviously like you mentioned, Hackney may have been, but it's, again, the money that's been pumped into that area, it's just getting bigger and bigger and better and better. There's more facilities and more amenities, and it's becoming a nice place to live. So again, that's just sort of proving the expansion of City over to the east side of Manchester, and again to the south side, all around Manchester.
I suppose the affordability pushes those things out as well, doesn't it? And people who potentially could have afforded to live in the city previously now perhaps can't, and will move slightly further out as the prices continue to increase.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's things to cater for all budgets in Manchester. There certainly is. I mean, I mentioned before the house price for the city centre and what a one-bedroom apartment would go for there. But again, you can go to these outskirts towns, which are just outside. Again, going back to the Metrolink, they're very accessible into the city centre. Very, very nice places to live in themselves anyway, and has everything that a person that lives there would need. But again, they're more affordable. So I think there is places in that, but they will certainly see growth over the next certain few years.
Another interesting driver in Manchester seems to be the postgraduate retention.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's always been good universities there, but people seem to be staying now.
Yeah, so certainly, I mean, we are seeing a lot of students that are studying at the two universities in Manchester, and obviously Salford University as well, are staying in Manchester, because the jobs have been created for them, and the infrastructure in terms of the offices that are coming, the new companies that are coming into Manchester, companies that are already there that can offer them jobs that they go to study for, which I think is very, very important. Sometimes for certain jobs, you go to university, you still go to a place, but you do have to move to a certain city, because that's where the jobs are for you. But I say there's certainly the jobs have been created for them to stay in the city. Again, it's not just the UK that come to the UK students that come to the universities in Manchester. We know from developers that we speak to, it's the whole world. They're renowned all over the world for students to come in and to do the studies here, and I say get their job for employment here as well. So again, it's making very, very good sounds for somebody looking to invest into Manchester.
Yeah, that does seem to be a really positive thing, that actually, obviously not just going there for university, but then after university you've got bright young minds driving the city, a lower average age, and that is seems to be driving the centre of the city especially, in that I suppose young people want to live nice and close to the facilities and amenities now, don't they?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think in terms of the jobs that they're coming for, it's professional jobs, and that's what we're providing for them. And again, going back to the developments, that's the sort of tenants clientele that you're going to be getting inside the city centre.
Okay, so when looking at Manchester, what would you say is likely to happen to the Manchester property market over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so I mean, I think in terms of the developments that are being built at the moment, some of them aren't completed, some of them are completed, and I say you've got completions set for 3-4 years, 3-4 years to come, and more developments that are going to be taking place there. You've got more jobs coming to the area. I mean, the airport expansion, for one, which I touched on in the first part of the show, I mean, that's not going to be until around 2030. So, again, that's what we mentioned in terms of that's going to be helping the economy in Manchester. It's not happened yet. It's going to be coming in 2030. The HS2 line, that's going to be, again, that's going to be 2028, could maybe go into 2030 as well. So, again, the signs are very, very good, very, very strong for the growth in terms of Manchester.
It seems quite a lot is happening in about 10 years from now, actually being delivered to the Manchester market.
Exactly.
So you probably expect quite a strong build-up to that point.
Absolutely.
Somewhat similar to, I suppose, areas that have been impacted by Crossrail in London.
Yes.
It's not quite done yet, but there's been a massive shift in pricing in a lot of areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to the point of, I mean, Manchester's a fantastic city. Obviously, I live there, I love living there, etc. So, it's got everything that you need there at the moment. But again, it's sort of going through a bit of a regeneration as such. It's not that it's not good now, but it can be so much better.
Well, I suppose when you're cutting the travel time from Manchester to London in half,
yes,
that has to have a positive impact, doesn't it?
No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I travelled down from Manchester today to come down for the show. 2 hours, 10 minutes it took me, and it's going to be cut down to just over an hour and 8 minutes. So, again, it's just making Manchester more accessible to the UK, and again with the airport expansion to the whole world. I mean, again, the airport is the UK's busiest airport outside of Manchester, which again people can fly in to do the business, etc. So it's going to have a huge impact, and I say it's not there yet. So there's potentially plenty of time for it to come into. Okay,
so if we summarise, the fastest growing city in the UK, increased transport links, lots of infrastructure, lots of positive development happening, seems like a really great opportunity.
Absolutely. And as I say before, it's not only just the UK fastest growing, in Europe. So yeah, certainly a fantastic place to invest in.
Okay, thanks very much, Nathaniel.
Thank you, Bob.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for now. Join me, Paul Mahoney, next time on Proper Wealth to discuss all aspects of wealth creation, including property.